Hillbilly Elegy chronicles the tumultuous upbringing of J.D. Vance, a young man born into a struggling, chaotic family in Ohio. His mother, Bev's, a single parent, battling not only poverty, but also drug addiction and what appears to be a bipolar disorder. He's constantly moving from house to house, with each move being tied to Bev's fleeting relationships. She jumps from one man to another, and every time she ends up moving in with them and bringing her kids, and then it doesn't work out because she's crazy. Amidst this turmoil, JD's only beacon of hope is his grandmother, Mama, a woman of fierce love and regret. Recognizing her role in Bev's hardships, Mama takes it upon herself to steer JD away from the family's patterns of dysfunction, instilling in him the belief that he can forge a different path. With Mama's guidance, JD graduates from high school, enlists in the Marine Corps in the wake of 9/11, and eventually earns a scholarship to Yale Law School. However, as he stands on the brink of a promising future with a pivotal law firm interview on the horizon, JD is pulled back into the vortex of his past. His mother's deteriorating condition forces him to return home, confronting the choice between his family's immediate needs and his promising future. So that's my little synopsis of Hillbilly Elegy. I had to write it down. Normally I just freeball these reviews and synopsis and I don't really think about what I'm going to say. But this one I had to write down because I saw this movie a few days ago and I had to rewatch it yesterday just because this story actually reminds me of a few people that I've met in my lifetime. And they're not actually poor white people. They're different races, but they have a very similar story. Coming either in one way or another. But this could either be the mother is addicted to drugs and they have a hard time and their grandparent raises them, or their mother never wanted them and their grandparent raises them. Also, I don't have kids, but knowing people with kids and being friends with them or related to them and knowing how their parents were with them and seeing how their parents are with the grandkids, this story kind of relates to, because the grandparents always want to be better to their grandchildren than they were to their kids, or they just seem different. The grandparents always seem different with the grandkids than they do with their kids. I guess maybe they somehow know their mistakes, or they don't, or they just want to be there, or they have the time. But most of the time it's always like that. And in this film, we see this guy, J.D. Vance's life is like that, where we find out later on during the film that his mother saw some pretty terrible things growing up. And what you do and who's around your children influences how they're going to be when they get older. So in this film, Mama kind of sees that JD's not going to have any hope being with Bev because she's a drug addict. And by the way, Bev is played by Amy Adams and Mama is played by Glenn Close. Very great actresses, phenomenal. I don't know the kid that plays JD or the man that plays JD because it tells a story from when JD's a boy and when he's a man. And when I first started watching this, I was like, like I said, I thought this is nothing. I've seen this before. I know stories like this. But as the film went on and I saw what JD went through as he got older and what the struggles he had to overcome as a kid, I just think the director, Ron Howard, didn't really grasp or capture the true essence of poverty, the true essence of hopelessness in this film. The actors did a phenomenal job. Amy Adams is terrific in this movie. This movie came out in 2020, and I guess critics didn't like it very much. Normally, in a different time, or if it was a fictional story, let's say, and it wasn't based on a Republican, it probably would have been nominated for an Oscar. Amy Adams' performance is believable. You see she has a lot of issues, and it was all caused by her mother. Her mother doesn't take responsibility for it until one day later on, but she doesn't say she's taking responsibility, but she decides to. And she says, well, JD's only hope's going to be if she's away from her mother, and she does what she didn't do with her daughters. And so she takes JD and makes JD live with her, and she doesn't hit him, but she probably did. She tells him, like, no, you're not going to be playing around with these kids. You're not going to be hanging out and doing this. You're going to be coming home. You're going to do your homework. You're going to get yourself out of this. Because we also discovered that JD's mom was actually very intelligent, and she could have had the opportunity to leave too, but nobody was really helping her at that time because Mama was dealing with her father, who was an alcoholic. So we see these generations of issues, being passed down, generational trauma. And JD has to break that cycle. And there are a lot of people all over that I think could relate to this in a sense. I could relate to it by knowing people, and I did not have it like that. Although you could not even have it one scintilla of this, but you have something that reminds you of, oh, this is why this is why that. Like I know a lot of characteristics I have, and I know, oh, this is why now, as an adult. But you're not going to realize that as a kid. And this movie's told through the two timelines of young JD and old JD. And young JD, while is everything he's dealing with, struggling to do better, right? And be with his grandmother, and how his grandmother's trying to help him get out of the situation he's in. And older JD, who's trying to get a job in law school, and his mom is in trouble, and he's brought back home. And he has to decide what he wants to do. And he basically, spoiler alert, he leaves his mother, and he says, I love you, but I can't be here. I have to do this. And he went on to be very successful. I don't even know everything about this guy. I didn't know anything about him until a month ago, because now he is the vice presidential nominee. And Hollywood at 2020 hated this film. I don't know why. I mean, I do know why in some regard, because maybe because he was a Republican senator at the time, but I don't think that was really what it was. I think it was more so the fact that because the only reason why this movie got made was because he was a never Trump guy. That's why it got made. That's why Hollywood was, oh, look, this is a Republican, there's a never Trumper, and the book is because it was based on a book, his memoir, and it was a best-selling book. So let's make this movie. Let's buy the rights and make this movie. And they got Ron Howard. They made the movie. They got great actresses. Glenn Close is great in this. Amy Adams, I've said it several times already. She's phenomenal in this film. It's really believable. She's really great. It's really sad. I don't think she was nominated for an Oscar. Definitely didn't win one for this, but she should have. She's great. But Hollywood is never going to do this because they have an agenda now. And the fact that at the time he was never Trump Republican is the only reason why it got made. But I don't know when it was released if at that time he went back on his not being a never Trumper, and he was a Trump supporter. I don't know. But all I know is that the critics hated this movie. Hollywood probably hated this movie, and that's why it has been made, so much so that Ron Howard's even going back on saying that he regrets kind of making this movie in a sense. And it's like, why? The movie's a good movie. It tells a good story. I don't give a shit that he's a Republican, and you didn't even say that he was a Republican in the movie. It was just a story about a guy and coming from poverty and having all this, generational demons, all these problems carried with him generationally, with his grandfather, with his grandma, with his mother, and overcoming all of these things and being successful. I mean, I don't understand this, but Hollywood has an agenda. They don't want certain things, so that's why. And I think probably the Republican things what hurt this movie the most is that he's a Republican senator, or at the time. Now he's Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate. That's why they gave it terrible reviews, because the fans or the audience gave it better reviews. And this is not a terrible movie. So my rating for this movie is going to be, I think, 4 out of 5 stars. I was wondering if I should do 3.5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, because I remember the beginning I didn't like it that much. I didn't like the scene where Amy Adams hits him in the car, or she doesn't really even hit him, and it's kind of like, I was like, ugh, please, I've seen worse, I know kids who've gotten worse than that, but he loved his mother so much. I remember that's when I was like, oh, and then everything he goes on after that, and how Mima takes care of him, and even, I don't know, I just liked it. I like this movie. I'm sorry, I guess, if you're mad and you're angry, but I like this movie a lot. I do say the younger story was much better for me than the older story, but the older story makes perfect sense because that's when he finally lets go, and he accomplished all these things in his life coming from where he came from. It was very interesting. I like this movie. So I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah, surprisingly. Yeah, I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars. So I was surprised, actually, that I'm giving it that high, because there are parts that I dislike, and the cinematography I dislike, and the locations that they used. I didn't feel like they were poor people. I felt like they were middle-class people. They just don't get that right. So, but with all that, I think the performances really was what took it over the top, and the story. I could relate to the story. If you liked the movie, let me know in the comment section what you thought. I don't want to hear about your politics in the comment section. If you dislike it because he's a Republican, okay. I can't. I don't give a shit. I'm talking about the movie. So yeah. Anyway, if you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and I will talk to you guys next time. Peace.